My husband received a terminal diagnosis, requiring a substantial sum of money for an operation to save his life. I felt a deep sense of self-disgust as I grappled with a desperate situation. Meanwhile, my husband emerged from the gloomy polyclinic, his demeanor more somber than a cloud. The building itself seemed to be painted in a melancholic shade of gray, as if intentionally adding to the despair of its patients. It was designed to dampen any lingering glimmers of hope in people already burdened by life's hardships. And there stood a robust man on the brink of tears, shattered by the cardiologist's diagnosis. For months, he had endured the persistent ache in his heart, stubbornly refusing to seek medical attention, as is often the case with stoic individuals. But as the pain intensified, stifling his every breath, he begrudgingly relinquished and called for an ambulance. And so he spent a month confined to a sterile hospital bed, subjected to countless tests. Today, his fate was sealed. The diagnosis was an irrevocable verdict without the possibility of appeal. The gravity of his heart condition hung over him ominously. Without a costly surgery, his mortality loomed, and his remaining days were numbered. To heck with all those doctors. They don't get the first thing about life. They say I'd got a year left. They just want to milk me for all I'm worth. Well, I'll show them what living with gusto means, even if it's for just one more year. I'll live so large, even the devils will be envious. Mason reassured himself. Heading home, his first stop was his old factory, where he'd spent years as a forklift operator. There in the HR office, he handed in his resignation, citing his imminent demise. Almost immediately, the word spread like wildfire through the plant. It wasn't even an hour before they gave the poor guy an envelope stuffed with cash that his coworkers had pulled together for his medications, and they bid him farewell. Now Mason had a whole lot of time and a bit of money. He took his sweet time going home, knowing his waitress wife would be there, who couldn't do a thing to help him and would just cry her heart out, worsening his already fragile state. The crisp notes in his pocket felt comforting, yet he knew they wouldn't cover the surgery. They were merely drops in the ocean, as the ex-driver sagely mused. Nonetheless, these bills could allow him some fun with ladies at a fancy restaurant, or maybe even a lucky streak at the casino, hoping fortune would grant him a windfall. And that's exactly what Mason did. Until the wee hours, he indulged himself, lavishing treats on women of easy virtue in a swanky pub, and flirting with the one-armed bandits that promptly guzzled down his cash. He barely managed to settle the bill for the ladies' companionship by the night's end. His revelry seemed to hit a wall as a sobering reality loomed. With his carefree days evaporating, he foresaw himself slumped in front of the TV, enduring his daft wife's lamentations. From a distance, Mason spotted the lighted window of their kitchenette in the 5-story building where he and his wife rented an apartment, undimmed by the late hour. This detail barely registered on his radar, as a man of his caliber considered his wife more of a possession, an extension of his will, to belittle or discard at whim. Mason had a deep appreciation for Eastern culture, where women were content in their designated roles. He couldn't understand why our society had become so enthralled with the idea of equality. These women had obtained empowering jobs that paid higher than men's, but he firmly believed that they belonged in the kitchen. Oh, why am I not a sultan? He pondered, imagining how he would teach these rascals a lesson in proper behavior. The thought of his imaginary harem and the modern-day women with loose morals, including his own wife, brought him solace. He believed that true equality awaited them there. Upon entering the apartment, Mason noisily discarded his boots, covered in a mound of snow, which then scattered across the impeccably cleaned room, a testament to his wife, Avery's diligent efforts. However, Mason failed to notice the order in the house, oblivious to the sumptuous dishes prepared for him on the dinner table after his long, tiring day at work. To him, it was all part of the natural order of things. As soon as her husband stepped foot inside, Avery promptly rushed towards him from the kitchen, exclaiming in distress, "Oh my God, honey, where have you been? Why wasn't your phone reachable? I've even called all the hospitals. I was terribly worried about you." The poor woman showered him with kisses and embraces. "Enough of your lamentations," Mason responded gruffly. "Don't worry, you'll be able to find me at the hospital soon enough. I'll be registering there, unless my strength gives out before then. I visited the doctor today, and your husband's time is nearly up. Are you listening to me? My days are numbered. I've got a diagnosis." Mom, her daughter's desperate cry echoed in her ears, piercing them like a sharp knife. "Mom." The woman's head shifted restlessly on the pillow, thrashing from side to side, as if she. Indeed, at that moment, Avery could scarcely hear her husband. Her vision blurred and her strength abandoned her. She sank to her knees in front of Mason, fearing she'd faint if she stood. Wrapping her arms around his legs, tears streamed down her face. She was deeply concerned for her husband, but he merely shoved her aside, sending her crashing against the wall. "Why are you clinging on to me? Can't you see I'm gravely ill? Move aside, I'm starving." While Avery curled up in the corner of the hallway, hugging her knees and sobbing in utter helplessness, Mason devoured the roast she had prepared, which waited for him in the oven. She couldn't allow the food to be cold on his arrival. Yet even this gesture went unacknowledged by her devoted husband. He filled himself at dinner and retreated to the bedroom, where before long, the steady rhythm of his snores filled the air. Avery, rising from her kneeling position on the floor, entered the room and gently draped a cozy blanket over Mason, lingering beside him to tenderly sweep his tousled hair away from his face. She was painfully aware of her husband's dire condition and the costly overseas surgery it necessitated, an option they simply could not afford. Despite the grim outlook, Avery refused to succumb to despair. She had long agonized over a solitary means to gather the necessary funds for her husband's medical expenses. The thought filled her with disgust and humiliation, yet she saw no alternative avenue. As months trickled by, a scene unfolded in the dim glow of a modest hotel room where Avery, a striking young woman, sat wiping away tears after a long night's work. She had just finished her shift at the restaurant, serving meals until the early hours, and was now steeling herself for the night's real challenge. In a desperate bid to save her beloved, Avery had descended into degradation. Her beauty had not gone unnoticed. It had repeatedly attracted propositions from patrons, suggesting indecent services far beyond her waitress duties. But previously, she had always dismissed such offers with a gentle but firm rejection. Yet now, trapped by circumstance, Avery found herself embracing that which she had once spurned. Regrettably, times alter. Presently, she had lost track of the tally in the past 6 revolting months of her receiving visitors. The woman was repulsed by her own actions, but it was the sole means to salvage her husband. Shortly, the door scraped open, revealing a tall gentleman adorned in a lavish suit. The waitress was prepared to tend to the man's needs once more, yet he distanced himself from her. Perching on the edge of the bed, he spoke in a tremulous tone. "Hey there, Avery. Never did I imagine that I would encounter you in such a setting, given how upright, honest, and humble you used to be. How did you end up in this life? My friend had engaged your services today, but upon recognizing you, I decided to come instead. I find it hard to believe that you would engage in such pursuits." Upon closer inspection, the woman identified the client as Luke, the boy who had escorted her briefcase home back in the 5th grade. He had been her first love, but so much time had elapsed since then. She tied the knot, and now she scraped together funds for her husband's medical procedure through less than savory means. Distraught, the woman broke down and revealed everything. As dawn was breaking, a sleek imported car pulled up to the 5-story residence where Avery and her husband resided. Bursting with joy, a woman emerged from the vehicle clutching a substantial parcel. "Thank you so deeply. Without your help, I might have succumbed to the dark abyss with so little time left. I'll pay you back," she expressed her gratitude. "Don't mention it. My feelings for you deepened because of your courage. It's regrettable we didn't cross paths sooner," Luke replied, leaving Avery immensely flustered. She hurried back to their apartment, elated to share the life-saving news with her husband. With hands shaking, she quietly unlocked their home, careful not to stir Mason as she sneaked down the hall and peered affectionately into the bedroom. However, joy turned to shock in an instant. The keys clattered from her grasp, ringing against the floor. A scene unfolded before her that would be unthinkable even for a foe. There lay her Mason, sound asleep in the embrace of not one, but 2 girls upon their marital bed. He had long since cast aside his conscience, brazenly entertaining mistresses under his own roof while his wife toiled away at work. When the keys clattered to the floor, all 3 of them jolted awake. However, rather than offering any form of justification, Mason pivoted, pointing the finger at his wife, blaming her for his unfaithfulness. He claimed she neglected him and, with a twisted sense of urgency, suggested he needed to experience everything life had to offer while his heart still beat strong enough to love. As his betrayed wife stormed out of the house, she caught one last mocking remark from him. "Fine, go on, you fool. The girls will look after me." A mere month later, Mason lay on a hospital bed, hooked up to an IV in the intensive care unit, barely clinging to life. Realizing he was in his final days, Mason began to ponder the meaning of his existence. With a heart full of regret, he yearned to seek his wife's forgiveness before meeting his end, but she had vanished and ignored all his calls. Accepting his fate, he prepared to bid farewell to life, just as his attending physician entered the room. "Wow, Lincoln, congrats. You were born under fortunate circumstances. Just a few more days and you're in the clear. And guess what? They footed the bill for your surgery. Today, they'll be transferring you to Germany." He couldn't believe his ears, and in a trembling voice, he asked, "Who paid for it?" "What's the matter with you? Don't you even talk to your own wife?" It was Avery, bless her heart, who slept with someone unworthy of her. In that moment, happiness began to slowly mend the broken heart of the woman. For now, she only had a friendly relationship with Luke, but soon things were bound to change, and this couple truly deserved it. Mason wailed in sorrow and regret, but it was too late. He squandered his life in an instant, losing the most precious thing of all. It was only then that he realized just how much his wife meant to him. But alas, it was too late. She would not forgive his betrayal. We tend to take for granted what we have, and we weep for what we've lost. It's a simple truth, yet sadly, many people forget it.